The start of the film. When we walk into a room, a young man named Rick is under pressure to clean up the mess he's produced over the last few days. After telling the story, he hears a noise coming from the adjacent room, where his mother Lucy is passed out on the couch. For the second time, Rick's mother Lucy tried to end it all because she was selfish. By the way, we find out about this when Rick calls for an ambulance and the driver knows his mother. Later, Rick finds out about his mother's recent letters, in which she says that she discovered that Rick was dating Miss Bender, her best friend, and that perhaps this is why Lucy tried to take her own life. Finally, Rick takes us back to the beginning of it all. Rick's mother, Lucy, neglects her children and abuses alcohol. She talks of divorcing Rick's father all the time, but it hasn't occurred yet. Kristen, Rick's sister, is employed at a strip club. Next, we see Joseph, Rick's father, who is likewise uninvolved with their kids. We also find out that Rick has never talked to Nay, a girl in his class, despite having a crush on her. The proprietor of the nightclub where Rick's sister Kristen works, Jimmy, is next introduced to Rick. Rick goes to the dancer's house to contact one of his dancers after Jimmy gives him the order to do so. Since this is Rick's first time ever being seduced, he gladly accepts her offer even if she doesn't want to go to the nightclub. He then makes a beeline for his pal Billy's residence. Miss Bender, Billy's mother, is also present. After Miss Bender sends Billy out to grab some goods, she starts to get close to Rick when he is by himself in the house. This is when their affair starts at school the following day. Rick and Billy are discussing how to win Na over. When Carlos shows up, he bets Rick $11,000 if he can get Naya to become his girlfriend. If not, Rick must pay Carlos $1,000. Rick hears this and agrees to it too, but he later finds out that Carlos is a gangster's son, and that he could even be killed if he can't pay the bet. Following this, Rick spots Lola in the restroom. In reality, Lola is an imaginary acquaintance of Rick's. Rick is urged by Lola to win Na over and win his heart. After learning that Na and her boyfriend Kevin had broken up, Rick becomes increasingly optimistic that he will win Naya over as his girlfriend. The kids are permitted to depart on their way out of school after their teacher unexpectedly passes away while he is instructing them in the classroom. After Rick approaches Na and asks her to go with him to the teacher's funeral, Kevin Herc approaches and begins to harass Rick. He looks at Kevin and responds, "Yeah, I have to go with Rick to the teacher's funeral." Rick attends the teacher's funeral the following day, and those individuals were seated in Rick's mother's vehicle. At that moment, Na informs Rick that she likes Josh's music in an attempt to win over Na. Rick informs her that he personally knows Josh Grinnell and that he will be attending his concert the following day. When Na hears this, she becomes incredibly happy and begs if she can accompany him to the concert. Rick finds out on the walkout that he is the father of the person who hit them during this ridiculous chat. They get hit from behind. Rick then goes to Jimmy, the manager of the strip club, and asks him to get tickets for the concert for him. After Father apologizes, Rick urges him to get his car fixed right away because Rick has promised to take Na to the show. Before Jimmy offers to assist him, he assigns Rick the duty of obtaining the items from his source. Next, Rick goes to retrieve the items, keeping some for himself because he had wanted a car to attend the event. When he asked to use Miss Bender's automobile, she agreed to give it to him after it was cleaned up. Obviously, when Rick goes to pick up the automobile the following day, Rick and Billy go to Jimmy to acquire the concert tickets when Miss Bender requests him to bring Billy's son with him. However, they discover Jimmy has abandoned them and hasn't given them the tickets. Then, both of them are anxious and wondering where he will appear. Billy hears Rick's father and Billy's father talking to a woman as they approach the window of the same hotel where Billy had noticed Rick's father's car parked. Inside, he apologizes, and N.A. forgives him, making some strong gestures now that Rick was unable to accept a nod to the concert. Tomorrow, when they go to school, a new teacher comes to teach them, and she also dies while teaching afterward. When Rick comes home, he gets a call from the car mechanic who is repairing his mom's car. The mechanic tells Rick that it will take another week to repair his car, so he lets Rick drive a very expensive car for a while. Rick is very happy about the car and has a lot of fun with Billy and N, but that night he is caught by the police. In fact, the police had caught Rick because they had found the dead body of the mechanic in Rick's mother's car, and since Rick was driving the mechanic's car, the police felt that Rick had murdered the mechanic. Then Rick is interrogated, and he tells the police that he went to that mechanic to get the car repaired at the behest of the church father. In the meantime, a lawyer comes there who is sent by the father of the church to help Rick. And at his behest, Rick puts all the blame on his dad, and then the police let him go while Rick was going to drop the lawyer home. The lawyer takes Rick's stuff that Jimmy told him to get him days before, and after getting drunk, she starts getting close to Rick, but because Rick is loyal, he drops the lawyer at her place and leaves upon arriving home. He finds that his sister Kristen has invited several of her nightclub's friends to the house. Seeing this, Rick gets an idea of taking advantage of the opportunity, and he tells Billy that they need to open a strip club for the night, which will earn them the money to offer to Carlos. Rick should get ready by doing this now, since he believes he will still lose the bet on obtaining Naw to be his girlfriend. After Rick tells Kristen and the others everything, they all accept it. Billy also addresses his mother as Miss Bender, but Rick is not amused by this at all. He is fed up with her constant chasing after him. Billy then leaves while Miss Bender tries to kiss Rick without his will, but Rick is attempting to escape her. Billy enters the house after a while and discovers his mother having sexual relations with his friend Rick. Billy is instructed by Rick to take his mother to a separate room. Rick then asks Jimmy to the celebration so that Jimmy may deal with Billy's mother. Billy and Rick begin making a nice living when the celebration gets underway. When Jimmy eventually shows up, Rick tells him to go get to work by sending him to Miss Bender. Naw then visits there as well, having been worried about Rick and the police investigation. After Rick shows her to his room, they converse and become close as they warm up, but that's when Miss Bender enters. The nightclub owner arrives at the same time, furious because his girls are aware that Rick is taking advantage of them for financial gain. At this point, Naw finds out that Rick is seeing Miss Bender. This infuriates her, and she decides to leave after witnessing her go. Rick makes an effort to persuade her, but she becomes even angrier when he discovers that Rick has bet Carlos in an attempt to impress her. Rick opened the local nightclub without a license, so the cops in the meantime detained everyone. Here, the police take everyone into custody save for Rick, and along with them, Naw is also taken into custody due to her attempt to strike Rick, accidentally striking the police officer in the face. Rick is feeling terrible about everything. Rick finds out that Naw has also fallen in love with him the following day when he meets everyone at the police station. However, after all these events, she no longer even wants to see his face when he gets home. Rick gets a call from his father informing him that everything that had happened in the movie up to this point was a flashback. From this point on, the story will take a different turn. Rick is now in trouble with everyone around him. He goes to the church to confess, where he tells the father about the nasty people and confesses about his affair with Miss Bender. Ironically, the father starts fighting with Rick because he was also having an affair, and he has got craps because of the end result. Rick then goes to Miss Bender and ends their affair. Rick then goes to the hospital to visit his mother, who notices that he is upset and tells him that he doesn't need to start cleaning everything up and owning his mistakes. Hearing all this, Rick gets influenced, but Carlos catches him, because Rick hasn't given him the bet money. But here, Carlos proceeds to bite Rick's palms, and seeing this, Rick gets very fearful, but Carlos laughs and tells Rick that he was just joking. Then Rick goes to the attorney and calls him that he needs her help to get his friend out of jail. Now, because Rick did not have the cash to bail his friend, the attorney hires him on a part-time job. The attorney then goes to the police station and gets Rick's friend released after this. Rick goes back to the hospital to meet his mom, where we come to know that Naw is doing a part-time job there. Rick goes to his mom and gives her divorce papers so that his mom can divorce his father. He also gives his sister the school papers so that she can go back, as she was suspended because of the jail case. Rick, coming out of the hospital, meets Naw. First, Rick apologizes to her for everything, and then he tells her his heart. Naw also started liking Rick, so she accepts his proposal, and then both kiss. This is when the movie Behaving Badly comes to a conclusion.